All right, we're going to go ahead and get started here. Welcome everybody to our presentation. I see a lot of familiar names and faces on the presentation tonight, as well as some new ones. So welcome everyone. Um, a little bit of background about us. Our company is called Parco. My name is John Mantilla. I'm one of the co-founders and CEO here at Parco. I have my teammate Lauren Fulcher on the line tonight as well. And at Parker, we help federal employees strategize their careers no matter what stage they're in. Sometimes we'll help folks who are just starting out and at the beginning of their careers and wanting to make sure that they're taking full advantage of all the benefits available to them as a federal worker. Then we work with a lot of folks who are mid-career, who are planning to, maybe they've just had a life change. They just got married. They just had their first child. Maybe they've been at the government for a decade or so, want to make sure that they're positioned correctly because they haven't updated their situation or their benefits since they onboarded with work. And then certainly, I imagine a lot of the folks on tonight, we work with folks who are nearing the end of their careers or even that are already retired, wanting to make sure that they have their finances all sorted out and taken care of. So we work with folks all throughout the country and around the world, helping them plan their finances and federal retirements. And it's been a pretty busy year, let me tell you. So I know a lot of you have been on our webinars tonight, but for those of you who are new, just a couple ground rules. If you have any questions, ask them in the chat window. There's also a Q&A window where if you have like a specific question, it'll call it in the Q&A, but we've also been opening up the chat to everybody. So you should be able to chat there during the presentation. Lauren will be in there during the presentation, and afterwards, I'll be able to pop in there to answer any questions that come up. Um, Also, everybody tonight will get a free one-on-one to go through your situation and all your planning, because we know everybody has their own unique situations. And so you can start that process by creating your account by scanning one of the QR codes that you see throughout tonight's presentation, creating your account on app.goparco.com, and you can schedule a time to talk with us there, or you can message Lauren or myself in the chat, and we'll get you booked up for you at any time to go through this all for you. So, a lot of folks on tonight, I imagine most of the folks on tonight uh, are thinking about or took, or maybe are being offered another DRP. So tonight we're going to be talking about: Are you ready for the DRP? This was a huge thing, that the big change with the Trump administration, huge change for federal workers, new opportunity for them to leave service, and uh, the date for the original DRP, for the actual retirement date, is fast approaching here. It's about 50 days away. And so we wanted to go through how to best prepare. So we're going to go just do a quick overview of some DRP quick facts. Then we'll talk about the ORA portal, which is the new online retirement application portal available for all federal employees who are planning to retire. It's replacing, some of you I know had the GRB or other portals. Then we'll talk about what to expect upon actually retiring, how you can best prepare for some of those things. Then we'll walk through some of, a classic example of the finances that federal employees face and how to best plan for that in retirement. Then we'll talk about our checklist and wrap up and how to get started. So let's go through just a couple quick facts about the DRP. This was a program offered and initially offered back in February to federal employees. They had about a week to make a decision about whether or not they wanted to basically go on an administrative leave and stop working and then get paid throughout the rest of the fiscal year, with their retirement date being 9/30. So that was kind of the initial DRP offer. And over the past 6 months or so, different agencies in different places have offered different versions of the DRP, have offered DRP 2.0s, 3.0s. Um, some of them have extended the DRPs to December instead of 9/30. You even have some folks who are taking DRPs and retiring. We've heard from some folks in January. So it's basically this new tool that agencies and departments have to encourage folks to leave as part of the new administration's workforce reduction efforts. So, just a little bit of background: who was considering the DRP, or who was it really compelling for? Kind of the obvious folks were folks like USDA Dave. He had 32 years of service. He was 58 years old. He was planning on retiring in March of this year. If he had gone ahead and retired in March of this year, he would have retired in March, would have had his pension then start after they process it starting in May, and get paid his retirement paychecks, his pension checks starting in May. The DRP was attractive, and these programs can be attractive, especially for folks who are retiring or planning to retire, because not only do you get paid to be uh, working up until the date of your DRP starting, the admin leave starting, but then when you're on that admin leave, you get paid throughout that period until your official retirement date. And for most folks, it's that now it's 9:30, fast approaching. Then your pension will start in November. So the DRPs were really attractive for folks who were planning to retire this year or who were becoming eligible to retire this year. And there were still exempted employees, and we know that there were folks who maybe couldn't take the DRP because they weren't allowed to based on their job or maybe it just wasn't right for them. You can still always retire under the normal retirement rules, which are age for most folks now, it's age 57 and 30 years of service. It's age 60 with 20 years of service, or age 62 with 5 or more years of service. You can always retire under those provisions. Um, so we know we had some folks that said, "Oh man, I would love to have taken this DRP, but it wasn't offered to me, but I'm eligible to retire." You can still retire then. You don't have to be offered those DRPs. So another big change that has come just over the past month or so is this new ORA portal or the online retirement application. So it used to be that different agencies would either accept retirement paperwork, like a physical packet of retirement paperwork, or you could go through something like the GRB to fill out your retirement paperwork through your agency. Well, now there's a new ORA portal. This is government wide. So it's a portal that all federal employees will have to use to do their retirement application. It's meant to be kind of like your first interface with OPM as you transition from an employee to a retiree. Because remember that when you're a retiree, OPM is basically like you can almost think of it as retirement HR. Now, there's been a lot of issues, and I think many of you probably have been experiencing this with the ORA's rollout. And if you're experiencing that, that is, I won't say that that's okay because I know it's not, it doesn't feel good, but it is definitely normal. There have been a lot of tweaks and bugs and issues with the rollout of this ORA, especially with this wave of folks who are taking the DRPs here at the end of the fiscal year. To access the ORA, you must request access to it through your HR. So you have to tell HR, hey, I would like to have access to the ORA to unlock it. So we've had some folks lately that we've been working with and helping them through the ORA process because we know that sometimes the questions can be confusing. And we'll help anybody who would like that during a one-on-one. Um, but we've had some folks say, "Hey, I'm on the ORA's website. How do I get in?" And then we ask them, "Hey, well, look, have you gotten access to it from HR? Have you told HR you want access to it?" And they'll say no. It's like, well, you have to go through HR first. Um, they also now are starting to ask for a PIN when you log in. This is something new since yesterday, at least from when we've been talking to folks. So when you log into the ORA, HR will give you a PIN, and you'll need to make sure that you remember that PIN so you have access to the ORA. Here's a here's an example of what the portal looks like. It's pretty simple. It'll populate with a lot of information um, from your agency or from your department. It'll have details of your federal service and things like that. A tip we want to give everybody on here is when you're going through this ORA experience, make sure the numbers are right. We've had a lot of folks who've logged in and said, "Hey, my service computation date's not right," or "Hey, I just bought back my military time and my SCD doesn't reflect that." Make sure these numbers are right before you submit it. So you would also think that they're pushing everybody through this new experience. So basically, all federal employees will be asked to go through the ORA portal to complete their retirement paperwork. So you would think that that process would be, what we would describe as digitally native, meaning like totally digital, very easy to do. Well, unfortunately, it's not. So there's several forms that you also need to upload on top of completing the online retirement application, on top of completing the portal, before you can actually submit the paperwork. Those forms include a W-4P. So this is where you tell them what tax withholding you want to do um, in retirement from your pension. It includes a FEGLI continuation of life insurance coverage or an FF 3107. Actually, I think that form is actually a 2818. Um, I think I had that mislabeled there. But you have to submit a FEGLI continuation of life insurance form, a physical one. You have to submit a FEGLI beneficiary form, so whoever you're naming as the beneficiaries on your FEGLI. You also have to submit the birth certificates for any of your children that you have under age 22. So we know a lot of federal retirees, have families, and many of them have children who are 22, 20, 21, 20 years old. You have to submit their birth certificates as well. So we're trying to make sure that you're prepared to have these documents handy. So when you go to the ORA portal and start to upload this stuff, um, you're not surprised. On top of that, you need to submit a FERS survivor benefit beneficiary form. Um, and then, especially for folks who are electing a survivor benefit on their pension, you need to submit a marriage certificate as well as the spousal consent form. And the spousal consent form needs to be notarized, especially if you're not electing the full survivor benefit on your pension. So there's this new digital experience that everybody has to go through, but then there's still these specific forms in the real world that you have to have filled out and prepared, or there's documents that you need copies of that you have to upload. So, you know, we always find that it helps with managing expectations when the first time that you hear about this isn't just through the ORA, or when you're trying to submit your stuff and the ORA is not letting you. That's what can be going on. So a couple folks, when they've been asking about this new ORA experience too, they've asked like, "What if I make a mistake?" Well, if you make a mistake, in the top right hand corner, there's the ability to submit a ticket to HR. And then people have been asking us, well, hey, if I have that ticket outstanding, let's say that my service computation date isn't right, can I still submit this stuff and retire on my expected date? We're working on finding an answer to that, but right now it's unclear. It's unclear if that retirement will be processed until that ticket is cleared out. Um, so, uh, yeah, that's the information that we know right now. And we also want to make sure everybody knows like these things have been changing. It seems like every day. Like I mentioned, Danny, one of our teammates here, who I think some of you have even worked with, was on the ORA yesterday, and that's where we found with one of our clients, and that's where we found the pin. So it seems like they're updating this experience with some degree of regularity. Um, so what the UX and what the user experience looks like today might not be what it is next week. So just keeping that in mind that this is a fluid situation. So that's some of the things to expect when it comes to the ORA and this new retirement planning experience that they have through the government. But what else should you expect upon retiring? Now, what's interesting about being a federal employee is that generally your guys' paychecks are incredibly consistent. You get paid every 2 weeks while you're working, basically no matter what. Of course, there's been government shutdowns and things like that. I acknowledge that, but it's a very regular, and you get back paid for that. But it's a very regular cadence of pay. When you retire, OPM will spend time processing your retirement paperwork, and that they're processing your retirement, um, whether you work for the State Department, NASA, the Post Office, the DoD, the DHA, wherever you work, USDA, you'll go through something called the interim period. And this is, again, for a lot of you who are retiring at the end of the fiscal year, maybe even at the end of the year, this is a really important thing to prepare for because we have seen folks who didn't prepare for this and it caused unnecessary stress right at the time that they're retiring. So if you retire at the end of September, your retirement will post with OPM at the beginning of October. Then you'll be owed your first pension check the first week of November. However, that first pension check that you're owed, let's say it's $1,000, you won't get $1,000. You'll get some amount less than that. They might pay you four, five, $600. It's usually between 40 and 60% of what you're owed. And they will underpay you for a period of time. Now, that period of time could last a month. It could last 6, 7, 8 months. We've had clients for whom that interim period where they're getting underpaid lasts almost a year. And so that can cause a really big cash flow crunch for folks right as they retire. Now, the good news is you'll get back paid for this time during the interim period. But again, that cash flow crunch can be really, really stressful from getting paid. You're on your DRP, you're on your admin leave, you're getting paid very regularly. It stops at the end of September. You don't get paid for the entire month of October. Then when they finally pay you, it's way lower than what you were expecting, but that can cause a real financial challenge for folks. So, one of the best ways that we always recommend folks prepare is to use your annual leave. Because if you can sell back, because you're allowed to sell back your annual leave, and so if you sell back your annual leave, that big check, along with your last check from working with the government, can help provide kind of a bucket for you to pull from when you're on that interim period to use as reserves until you get that back pay, you know, whenever that interim period ends for you. Hopefully that made a lot of sense. So, and then we're just kind of talking about the value of selling back that annual leave. In USDA Sam's example here, if he has, it's based on your base salary and your hourly rate. So if he retired with 448 hours of annual leave, net of taxes, he'd get a check for over $11,000. So that's where that can be really helpful. Some other ways to prepare when it comes to getting ready to leave the government is that if you have the ability to access your EOPF with maybe all your SF50s or your DD214s or anything else like that that you want to have access to. Hold on one second. That you want to have access to, it is way easier to get access to that stuff while you're still considered an employee. So downloading that to have it handy just in case there's an issue. We've had folks that downloaded their entire EOPF and it was a big file, but they're glad they have it now. And I know many of you have already done this, but you can always safely store your documents on the Parco platform. If you create your account, you can save them there and they'll be encrypted and saved for you so you can have those all in one place. We wanted to make that nice and easy for you all. So some other ways that people are worried about preparing, or I know many of you who maybe took the DRP weren't necessarily expecting to retire this year, or maybe you're retiring a little bit younger than you thought you would. And so you're wondering, hey, what should you know, I'm going to have my pension, maybe I'll have my first supplement. I've got this TSP, but I'm not 59 and a half yet. Will I be able to access it? Well, there are ways that you can access your money before you're 59 and a half. The first one is something called the IRS Rule of 55. And what this states is that if you retire on or after the calendar year that you turn 55, which for most folks who took the DRP, that's probably the case. You can take withdrawals out of your 401k or your TSP. So it has to be an employer sponsored plan without any penalty. So you'll pay taxes on this money, sure, but you won't pay the IRS 10% penalty that would normally apply to early withdrawals. So that's one layer of confidence that you can have if you're concerned about that. And we help people strategize around that every single day. Aside from an age 55 withdrawal, you can also do what's called a 72T withdrawal. So a 72T withdrawal is another form of withdrawals that allows you to take money out of a retirement account. This includes both IRAs and 401ks and TSPs so long as you take out what are called substantially equal payments or SEPP payments. Those SEPP payments need to be at least once per year. They have to continue for 5 years or until age 59 and a half, whichever is longer. So, for example, let's say that you're taking the DRP and you're 57 and you want to take some money out of an IRA. You can take these SEPP payments, but they would have to persist for 5 years. So you'd have to have those payments coming until you're 62, even though you'd be past age 50, 59 and a half in 2.5 years. And then the amount of those payments, what qualifies as an SEPP payment, is based on the IRS is basically three calculation methods. There's an RMD method, there's a fixed amortization method, and then there's a fixed annuitization method. And it's something that we can help you strategize around. We've been doing that a lot for folks as the end of the fiscal year is approaching, but it's all based on life expectancy and IRS interest rate guidelines. And it's pretty simple to have a withdrawal qualify as an SEPP. There's just a little bit of paperwork you have to make sure you're prepared for. So again, these are the types of things where we've had a lot of folks ask us, "Hey, I'm taking the DRP. What am I going to do about this?" Okay. Age 55 withdrawals or 72 Ts. Hey, I'm thinking about taking the DRP. What about the interim period? So we wanted to make sure that we're focusing on those things. What's nice about the 72T piece is that it allows you to access your funds before you're 59 and a half, especially for early retirees. That can be particularly important, especially when you're wanting that predictable cash flow as you enter retirement. Um, but you do have to follow their rules, and you don't want to violate those rules because they can trigger penalties. So I imagine a lot of you may have done this planning already if you've already taken the DRP or you're in the midst of your admin leave, but it's worth a refresh that as federal employees, I mean, and then becoming retirees, the fact that you get to think about retirement as young as you are able to is really unusual. Most American, and we cover this a lot in our webinars where we talk about how the Social Security strategy is different for you all than for most Americans. The 401k and TSP strategy is different, and investment strategy is different for you guys than most Americans. The healthcare strategy is different for you than most Americans because you have these benefits through work. And it's worth just kind of touching on a refresh, and we've probably done this example before, so some of you may be familiar with this. But with DHA Day, he's 60 years old, he has 30 years of service, maybe he's taken the DRP. His base salary was $75,000 while he was working. His net take home pay was just shy of $1,600. He had a high three of 72,000, and his Social Security at age 62 is 1,800, which we're going to use as the basis for our calculation for his first supplement. So when he looked at his numbers, he says, "Look, I'm making almost 6,300 bucks a month right now while I'm working. When I look at my pension and my supplement, it's going to be just over 3 grand. That's a $3,000 gap. There's no way I can even consider retiring, even though I have these great fixed income sources coming in retirement." And we say, "Well, look, Dave, like you're not going to have your TSP deductions. You're putting in 10% for that. You're going to keep your Fegley Basic Life, but maybe you're going to drop your option B, right? Your family's older. Maybe you don't need to have all this life insurance as you get older. Your taxes are going to go down as your federal income tax rate goes down because you're making less on a gross basis. And you don't pay Social Security, Medicare, taxes in retirement. Now you're going to keep your FEHB, but the price stays the same in retirement. I mean, for most Americans, aside from income, the number one concern they have in retirement is healthcare. As federal workers, you don't have to worry about that. It's why a lot of you could consider taking the DRP because a lot of these things that are concerns for most Americans, you don't have to worry about nearly as much. Different type of planning. So in Dave's case, the net difference that what he's working for is about $1,135 per hour. So when he's maybe thought about the DRP or was thinking about retiring, he's effectively going to work for $1,135 a month. So when we think about how much of his pension and his supplement chain compares to his gross income, it's only making up about 50% of his gross income. But on a net basis, over basically 67% of his income is replaced from just his pension and his first supplement. Now that means that there's a 33% shortfall that he needs to plan for, but that's certainly something that he can do, especially with his TSP, with his investments, depending on how much he's saved. And so when he thinks about, hey, how much do I need to have set aside? And this is the kind of thinking that a lot of folks, especially for those who have taken these DRPs and are thinking about retiring this year, this is the type of planning you should be doing. And so it's something we help a lot of folks out with. Consider using that 4% rule where it says, hey, look, to bridge that gap, or if you're planning to take withdrawals out of your account, plan to take about 4% of your account balance out each year to sustainably take those withdrawals. Well, that was true in the early 90s, but more modern thinking with where interest rates are, how things have changed with people living longer, the more common thing is to use the 3% rule. And so, well, again, we're trying to back into what amount of money he needs to have set aside if he wants to live the same way he's living in retirement um, as he's working. Okay, it's using 3%. That's he needs to have about $454,000 set aside. But then when we adjust for taxes, it's about $500,000, $522,000 set aside. And so if we use the 3% rule, okay, to get that $1,306 a month gross, he needs to have about half a million bucks set aside. If he uses a 4% or a more aggressive withdrawal rate, he needs to have almost 400 set aside. And one of the things that we help a lot of folks with is they're approaching this DRP and retirement date is, hey, how do you set aside less to get more while also leaving more money to compound in the market? So, so one of those other things that you should be thinking about now, so that way you have a really good game plan for when the end of the fiscal year happens and you're retired. I mean, this is for a lot of you, this is what you've been working for your whole life is to be able to retire as young as you're able to. And so when we think about sort of like a checklist for everybody on tonight to think about as they're approaching the end of the fiscal year and they're potentially going to be retiring here with the under the DRP, there's a few really important things. First thing is that if you haven't already, make sure you request access to the online retirement application from me. That is super, super important. We've had, Lauren, I don't know what the number is. I'm sure you could say something, but I can point to probably half a dozen folks that I've talked to in the past week that we've tried to do the ORA portal with who didn't have access to it because they hadn't asked for it from HR. They hadn't had it unlocked for them. So if that's you or if that's somebody you know, uh, request access to the ORA because otherwise you won't be able to do it. And then get all the required forms together. If your birth certificates or your kids' birth certificates, or if your marriage license, or if these different things are in a safety deposit box at the bank, the bank's only open usually during the week. Maybe you can only access the safety deposit box during the week. So if you need these documents, it's best to go get them now, get the copies now, have those handy because you're going to need to upload them here soon. Download your EOPF and other personnel files that you need that you want to have records of for yourself. And then importantly, evaluate your retirement lifestyle goals. You've been working for a long time. How do you want to live in retirement? What does that look like? Evaluate what those lifestyle goals are, and that's something we can help you strategize around. And then make sure that you create your app.goparco.com account where we bring this all together in one place to help you plan and make sure you've got everything correct and that we're keeping you up to speed on all the latest updates from these things because they're changing all the time. And what's nice is that, hopefully you're finding these presentations helpful because we don't think that you should have to memorize all this information. There's so much going on, there's so much changing. I imagine at work, a lot of you have more on your plate now than ever, just with all the people leaving work. And so, for those eyes and ears out there keeping an eye on it. And you can see how all of the things we've talked about apply to yourself right through the Parco portal. And so I'm going to open this up for questions. I see a lot of them in the chat window here. Um, as always, it's a real pleasure to present to you all. I'm also going to try something. We haven't done this before. I'm going to launch a quick poll just to get a sense of how folks heard about us. Because we always like to know how we're reaching people and how we can reach more to who would find it helpful. So with that, I'll keep things open and answer any questions that you all have. Um, so I'm looking through the webinar chat window now as well as the Q&A. Hopefully you're all finding these webinars helpful. And if I always ask this as well, if there's a specific topic that you'd like us to cover, a few of the ones that have come up lately have been like getting a mortgage in retirement. How difficult is that? Um, RMD planning and Roth conversion planning. A lot of folks have questions about like FEHB and Medicare and things like that. Um, so a question from Elizabeth is Social Security is withheld from FERS payments, correct? Elizabeth, would you mind clarifying that? Are you saying Social Security taxes or something else? Um, but to answer some other things, RMD planning, how to, you know, save as much or grow your money. Social Security taxes, great question. So you actually don't pay Social Security taxes on payments from pensions, which includes your first pension. You don't pay Social Security taxes on your first supplement. You don't pay Social Security taxes on your Social Security benefit. You don't pay Social Security taxes on distributions from your IRAs, annuities, TSPs, anything like that. Um, Social Security taxes only apply toward or only count when you have earned income. So great question, but they're actually not charged up from it. So Mr. asks, in other words, I don't have to do anything to submit the application to OPM, correct? So once you complete the OAR experience on the online retirement application and click, I can't remember what their terminal button is. I think it's submit, um, something like that, a review and submit or affirm and submit. That's all you need to do. Um, that will send it to HR and go to that will send it to HR and begin the process of that getting handed off to OPM. You don't have to contact OPM directly. Does that answer your question, Mr. Campbell? Next question. Thank you. Can you explain? Oh, can you explain what it means to sell back your annual leave? I'm on the admin leave for the DRP and haven't used annual leave this year. I was told I would receive a payout option upon separation. Is that correct? That's exactly correct, Miss Caitlin. So when we say selling it back, it's that they'll pay you out for any unused annual leave upon separation. It's just for a lot of folks who are on the DRP and now admin leave, it's pretty well automatic. But when we're explaining it to folks about how valuable it is, we like to describe it as a sellback, um, because it's basically part of their compensation that the government will buy back from you. Uh, so great question. All right, let's see here. Da, 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 da. I saw a question about Janelle asked. I saw a question about the GRB versus ORA. At IRS, we were told that although we completed everything via GRB, we still had to redo an ORA. We're hearing the same thing, Janelle, and we're not just hearing that from IRS. We've heard that from some folks. I think we've heard that from some folks at DoD, some folks at uh, DHA. So it seems like they're really pushing folks to do the ORA stuff, even though you've already done it in GRB. And I know that's very frustrating, um, but that seems to be the case. Let's see here. Is it correct that your unused annual leave will be paid out in the final paycheck? That's usually how it is. Yes, that's usually how it is. Um, all right, Paul, let me read your question here. Yeah, it seems like for a lot of people, um, um, Mr. Hessler gives a really good, um, and I appreciate that comment, sir. Um, Gives a good anecdote and a good shares an experience that he had um, with even though he submitted the stuff through GRB, he had to do it through ORA, and it bears repeating. Really make sure the information that is pre-populated in ORA is correct. We have seen a lot of it that's not correct. Good question. So Kim asks, how is the annual leave tax if we retire in December and receive it at the would it be, 2026 income? So it would depend on when it's paid, but they automatically withhold from the annual leave check at a 31.45% tax rate. So they kind of tax it like a bonus. So they automatically withhold the taxes from it in the payment. So most folks, just because they're not in the 31% bracket, will get a refund for some portion of that payment when they file their taxes in the following year. Connie asks a really good question about the high three calculation on the ORA. Lauren, I'd say see if you maybe have a comment on that. Um, I haven't seen that specific issue before. Um, you know, and I hesitate to say whether or not you're confirming your high three on there or not, or if they're using an estimate, because oftentimes like those values that are in there are just an estimate, and they'll look at your actual highest 36 effective annual base salaries, adjusted annual base salaries. Um, but I Lauren, I'd be curious if you have a comment on that from Miss Connie. Um, Ricky, yes. I would. Uh, Mr. Ricky asks about. He submitted his retirement paperwork back in May through GRB, but hasn't heard about the ORA. What should I do, or how do I contact? I would reach back out to your HR contact to get access to the GR to get pardon me to get access to the ORA through your work or through your agency. Oh, Janelle, that's a great question. When receiving the first supplement, is that paid with your pension or is it a separate payment? They're paid together. Even though they're two different things, they're both paid to you by OPM, so they're paid together. Great question. And Paul makes a good suggestion. If you do still have access to GRB, and Ricky, this might be particularly relevant for you, um, go through their retirement dialogue on there, and it might help you when accessing ORA generated amounts. Um, and try to save those calculations. And if there's a way to contact them through there too, you may want to try that as well. Keep those questions coming. These are great. Hopefully, you're all finding this really valuable. Um, we know that it's kind of crazy when the DRPs were announced. It seemed like it was far away, and now it's 6 weeks from now, 5, 7 weeks from now. So it's really coming up, and there's a lot that you can do to make sure that you're prepped and planning. And that's how we want to be. We want to be helpful for you all. That's why we built the platform too. And if you have other suggestions for future webinars, I mean, this DRP one was one that came up because we had some folks that saying, "Hey, man, I'm having real issues with these ORAs. This is really confusing. I'm really worried." So we wanted to make sure we were providing something really relevant quickly for you all. Um, so if there's other things that are like that, please tell us. If you're dealing with issues with, I know that TSP just had, they just changed some stuff, so they've got a bunch of like AI help now. It's kind of interesting. Um, and people are frustrated by it. The question from Belinda is, what is the eligibility criteria for the first supplement? I'm 61 with 38 years of service. Am I eligible? You are. So you'll get paid the first supplement until you turn age 62. When you turn 62, that supplement will go away because you can turn on Social Security at that point in time. And so, Belinda, if you'd like, you can create your account. You can create an account on app.goparco.com, or you can scan this QR code. Um, 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 you can scan this QR code, and we'll do that analysis for you, and show you exactly what your first supplement would be, your pension would be, and all that stuff. Okay, Ricky, you don't have the cat card. I would try to reach out to HR then, um, and tell them, hey, you need access to the ORA. I'm not seeing a ton more questions in the chat window, and I'm not seeing a ton more in the Q&A window either. So I'll leave things open for just a few more minutes. Oh, great question, Sean. Do you charge for your services? We do not. So all of our retirement planning services, all of our consultations, our platform is totally free of charge. We are a fiduciary financial services company, so we help people with managing their money, solving their income needs, helping them with life insurance. When rates were lower, we had a lot more folks reaching out about mortgages. We do taxes for people. And so we're basically we built a one-stop shop for federal employees to be able to get all their finance and retirement needs in one place. And hopefully through this nice platform that hopefully we all find really helpful. Oh, Karen asks, is Quinn still here? Quinn is, yes, she is still here. She is on maternity leave. So I know a lot of you worked with her before. Um, and so yeah, she's on maternity leave. So she's still here and she still asks about all you. Sure. So a breakdown on how they calculate your high threes. They'll basically look at your highest 36 consecutive years of or consecutive months of service throughout your career. They'll basically like take your highest 36 months, convert those into an annual amount, and look for like the highest in order. Then they'll average those and calculate your pension that way. So if you get I can't remember the name of the form, but you can get basically like your federal earnings history. It might be something you can access through your HR portal, and um, it'll show all of your earnings history, and you could calculate it there, or sometimes even the pension estimators that you can get through work might show it too. But usually, if you're looking for a quick little back of the envelope number, it's usually about 94 to 96% of whatever your current salary is a pretty good estimate of what your high three is, unless in the past you had a big increase. Oh, and thanks, Liv. I'll make sure we tell Quinn that. And thank you, Richard, and everybody for the compliment. And Janelle, yes, the 3%, 4%, that's something we would definitely discuss in a one-on-one. So if you'd like, Lauren can give you a buzz here right after the appointment tonight or the presentation tonight, and we can get you on the calendar. All right, I'll keep the chat and questions open for just a few more minutes if you all still have any more. I mean, I'll stay here as long as you all want, of course, um, uh, but if there's nothing else, I don't want to. You don't have to hang out with me tonight. Thank you all for the compliments too. It means a lot, and we know you all need the help. Uh, Hopefully, you're finding these helpful. Jason asks, my ORA doesn't show my high three calculations. Should I be concerned? Um, I wouldn't be concerned about that. Um, no, some more good questions here. I wouldn't be too concerned about it. I would just want to make sure that you know what your number is. Um, it's not a issue, but it's one of those things you wish would be populated in there. It's not going to mean that you don't get paid your pension. Shelley asks, if you're keeping FEHB, how is it paid during the interim period? So they will automatically withhold that from your pension payment. So they'll pay for it basically for you during that interim period. So you don't have to worry about that. Thank you for the comments and the compliments, Paul and Peru. Really, really, really means a lot. Is there a website for retirees that is equivalent to Employee Express? Lauren, correct me if I'm wrong on this. What's the you may be able to provide this to Mr. Campbell. I can't remember what the URL is for the OPM. I think it's Services Online is the name of it. .gov. That basically becomes your HR portal for retirement as a that's like where you log in through OPM. It's where you have your CSA number and everything to log in. And Mr. Campbell, if you just hold on for a few minutes, I think Lauren will be able to post that in here. I can try to pull it up for you too. So, Benita, you said that a friend sent this webinar info to you directly. How do you get access to it sent directly? If you shoot me an email or you shoot us an email at info@goparkgo.com. If you send us an email to that just saying, hey, add me to your list, we'll put you in our system to make sure added to our D list, our distribution list. So that goes out to you. And we're going to try to get a lot better about putting this information up on the website too. And oh, perfect. Yeah. Servicesonline.opm.gov. So can you please repeat the answer to the high three calculation? Thank you for what you do. So I'm always going to read out the compliments because they're nice. So your high three is technically calculated based on your highest 36 consecutive months of service with the government. So it's not just your years, you get credit for every whole month. And they'll basically look at what was your effective adjusted annual rate of pay during those highest 36 months, and they'll average that out. And whatever that average value is, will be what they use as the basis for your pension. So, Mr. Charles, hopefully that was a helpful answer to you. And if you'd like, we can answer that certainly in a one-on-one as well. Let's see here. Oh, well, that's a good question. All right. Oh, could you repeat how FEHB is paid? So if you retire, or when you guys retire at the end of September, your FEHB will be paid automatically by OPM even though you're in the interim period. So it'll automatically be calculated, and when they screw you up um, when your interim period ends, it will be net of those FEHB withholdings. So, Lori, to answer your question, yes, you would receive a bill. I would expect it to be kind of like a quarterly bill, so you won't get one every month, but it'll say, "Hey, look, for the past 3 months, your pension's covered X percentage of your FEHB or X dollars of your FEHB. Here's what you owe." That's not uncommon, not uncommon at all. Okay, Caitlin says, I've been told processing of our applications for retirement won't even start until mid-November, so the interim period won't start until after. After will the FE will that affect FEHB continue continuity? Echoing thanks for reading. So that won't affect FEHB continuity for you at all. The interim period is going to last a while for you guys, which stinks because there's a lot of people retiring here at the end of the fiscal year. But you won't lose access to any of your FEHB coverage. Kevin says, is that while they pay your FEHB, they don't pay your FedVIP or your long-term care if you're having it deducted out of your pay? I haven't seen that, Mr. Campbell, but I could check on that. I have not heard somebody tell us that before, but I'm not saying it's not correct. But I do know they ask on the retirement paperwork and on the ORA, do you want to keep, if you're enrolled, do you want to keep your federal dental or do you want to keep your LTC in retirement? And our interpretation of that and experience of that has always been that that means that they're going to withhold it out of the pension check. But if if you told me, hey, it actually works differently now, uh, I wouldn't say that would be a surprise to me. But I have not heard anybody say that. Um, and we've worked with a lot of folks, especially after retirement, because they debrief us on how it was, and I haven't had anybody mention it before. Um, I believe they'll pay for it during the interim period. Um, but I could check with our team on that, and if Lauren, if we want to flag that and just get back to Mr. Campbell when we get an answer, that's something that Danny might know the answer to. Yeah, so it sounds like a couple other folks are saying the same thing, Mr. Campbell. So that definitely could be true for the interim period. I, that would not surprise me. I haven't had somebody ask me that before, which is hard to believe because I've been doing this for a while. I haven't had somebody mention that or ask that before. All right. Any other questions from this evening? Thank you, sir. All right. Well, look, I'm going to let you all go. As always, it's a pleasure to present to you. We'll for those who want to be added to the list, we'll add you to it. Looking forward to seeing you all next week for Webinar Wednesday. And be sure to create your account in the meantime on app.goparco.com. Get your profile all set up there. And we're here to help you and make sure you book your appointments because we'd love to work with you one on one. Everybody have a great night and have a great rest of your week. Stay cool.